Hey boys and girls, today we're going to talk about the Neolithic Age. The Paleolithic meant Old Stone Age. The Neolithic must mean New Stone Age. So this is where man really starts to make some serious changes that help lead us to civilization and, still a long ways off, but on the path to the world we live in today. All right? So some key stuff. Make sure you know the differences between Paleolithic people and Neolithic people. That will be on the test, guaranteed. All right. So Neolithic means New Stone Age. Homo sapiens during this period, probably the biggest thing they did was developed agriculture. They started farming, and we'll talk about why that's important here in a second. Next, as a way of stabilizing their food source, in addition to farming, they domesticated animals. When you buy a puppy and you teach it to go to the bathroom outside, that's domesticating that animal. Okay, you are taming it, teaching it things, etc. All right, and these animals could be used to breed, to make more animals, obviously, as a, again, stable food source. Their weapons, their tools, their spears, advanced, got better. Okay. And obviously they went from stones, to metals like iron and stuff like that. So weapons and tools gradually, again, are getting better in making people's lives easier back then. Weaving. Okay, they developed weaving skills, which could be used for satchels, bags, clothes, blankets, coverings, shoes, that types of thing. Those types of things where they could carry, if they're gatherers, okay, or if they're pulling crops out of the field. Now they can transport things much easier than they could before. Same thing with pottery. All right, pottery could use, before we have, this is like, consider this prehistoric Tupperware, if you will. All right, they used pottery to hold food, water, collect things as storage, etc. And this takes us to the agricultural revolution. All right, this is a big point in early human history because now people stayed in one place. When you can farm and make your own food, that takes the nomadic element out of it. Okay, they could stop being nomads. They could stay in one place by a river valley, grow crops, and have a stable food source. They didn't have to follow the animals anymore. Yes, they sent out hunting parties to hunt animals for meat and things like that, but this was the game changer. Neolithic Age is also called Agricultural Revolution. So if you hear Agricultural Revolution, we're probably talking about the Neolithic Age. And as I said before, nomads could stop moving around and they could stay in one place. They could become farmers in permanent settlements or villages. And that was a big deal. Okay, before they had to pack up everybody, the whole clan would move to follow the herds. Now, this guy, he could go out, take his buddies out, and go hunting on a few days, bring back some meat, some of the kills that they got, and share it with the village. And we talked about domesticating animals. They learned to grow their food. And all of these things were important. All right. If you look up here in this picture, we got our little village. But now that they're farming, okay, you got a couple of huts here. You got a couple more huts. You get a couple more huts. More people, let's say some nomads discover this little village here, and they say, hey, this is a great place. We're going to stay here. And so the next thing you know, these little villages turn into something like this. Early cities, early civilizations with a lot more people and obviously more things that they have to deal with, okay, which is obviously going to give rise to things like government, law and order type stuff, okay. More people means more issues that have to be dealt with. All right, so the agricultural revolution took us from this to this. Without farming, there would be no this. Okay, because people couldn't stay in place long enough. They'd have to leave to go hunt. All right, and again, this is a archaeological dig over in Scotland. All right, this is kind of what some of the early places looked like. And this advanced Homo sapiens towards civilization. We live in modern civilization. Okay, and if we did not have these things that happened in the past, we would not have what we have now. All right, so it's a long process that did not just happen overnight. All right, archaeology. All right, this is a famous archaeologist, Indiana Jones. Maybe you've heard of him. Great movies, great movies. Archaeologists find and study evidence of early humans. All right, so this obviously is a fossil. If they find some tools or weapons, those are called artifacts. All right, artifacts are man-made objects like tools, clothing, art, weapons. Fossils are bones, things that were organic. Okay, and that have survived over the course of time. They also use scientific tests. Now, let me back up real quick. Okay, these are called excavations. To excavate something means to dig, and they'll have to be very delicate. And they're using brushes here because if they use other things, it might mess up. You know, these things are delicate, fragile, and chip and break easily. All right, you can see. Again, more looking for artifacts or any type of fossils that would help explain how this civilization, how these people lived. More things that are discovered: hooks, arrowheads, spear tips, broken pots, etc. Right, carbon dating is a way to determine through a scientific process how old something actually is. All right. If you have any questions about carbon dating, a good person to ask is your science teacher or science chemistry teacher. But basically, it gives us an approximate age of something based on the decay of the carbon atoms. Since everything has carbon in it, okay, carbon is pretty much present in all organic material and inorganic. All right, the first famous archaeological site is Stonehenge. And Stonehenge is over here in England, southern part of England. You can see London here. Okay, so this is where Stonehenge is, and it's probably you've probably seen pictures of it. You probably didn't know what it was, but you've seen pictures of it. All right. Stonehenge, they started building it around 3000 BC in the Neolithic Age, and it was completed about 1500 years later in the Bronze Age. Bronze is a metal, so we're going from technology is changing. We're going from stone weapons to metal weapons, or using metals for tools and weapons. Okay, here again, Stonehenge. Now, some archaeologists believe that this was a burial site that was used for ceremonies. Right. And another interesting thing you can see here in this picture, the approximate size of the stones. A lot of these stones came from very far distances, and they weighed a lot. So there are a lot of questions about how did they get these stones from hundreds of miles away to this location. All right. What types of engineering ideas did they use to do that? Some people obviously also float the idea that the aliens helped them out. Anyway, another picture. All right, Catalhoyuk is another Neolithic settlement that is currently under excavation in Turkey, which at the time was Anatolia, also known as Asia Minor. So Anatolia, Asia Minor, and Turkey, same general area. All right, and you can see here where we're talking about. Okay, Mediterranean Sea. We're going to be all over the Mediterranean this year, and if you take World History 2 next year as well. But here's Catalhoyuk. This is Asia. This little piece of land here is called Asia Minor, present-day Turkey. And here's Anatolia. All right, and we'll be talking about Mesopotamia here pretty soon. The last excavation means to dig out or extract from the ground. So if you excavate something, you're pulling it out of the ground, you're digging it up. All right. Excavating, excavator. Here's another. Obviously, you can't read all this, but it gives you an idea of how this looks like the adobe dwellings of the American Southwest Indians, like the Navajo, Pueblo, etc., in southwestern United States, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, possibly. And then finally, the last two are Aleppo and Jericho, and they are very close to one another. Actually, Catalhoyuk, Aleppo, and Jericho are all pretty much, very close to each other on the map. Here's the Fertile Crescent, which again we'll talk about. Jericho is here, which if you are familiar with the Bible, Jericho is in there, is mentioned several times. Aleppo you may have heard of, which is in the news because it is the ancient city and it's kind of caught in the middle of the civil war between rebels and the Syrian government. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in class. I'll show you some pictures from there. And Aleppo and Jericho are part of something called the Fertile Crescent, which starts here in these two rivers and kind of looks like a boomerang through this area here. I'll show you a better map for you, but you'll see it later. It's the Fertile Crescent here. All right. Here's another picture of Jericho, like if you've heard the walls of Jericho. The walls obviously were meant to keep out invaders as service protection. Okay. And here is Aleppo. This is again in modern day Syria. So you've got a modern day city around the ancient city. And again, this whole area has really been taking a lot of destruction from the fighting between the government and the rebels in Syria. Lots of bad stuff happening there. All right, so that's a wrap for today. Questions, make sure you write them down. We can talk about them in class. Key points. 1, agricultural revolution. It's a big deal. Know why it's important. Just know it. Know the difference between paleo and neo. And the 4 archaeological digs. All right, so if you need to go back, get some of the information that you missed, please do so. Make sure it's filled out tomorrow so we can go over it in class. See you then.